Everyone thought I was Willow's simp. Some even had the nerve to ask me right to my face, "What do you think about simps?" I replied, 2 words, one horizontal, one vertical. Stand tall, and there's still hope. Kneel down, and you're doomed. While everyone thought I was just talking big, I sold my morality for 50 million. From that moment on, I gained 50 million, and lost the title of simp, all because I went wild in front of Willow. I went wild at school. I went wild outside. I went wild online. I went wild like no one could stop me, and earned myself the title of Mad Dog. Chapter 01. Just because she didn't like the flavor of the milk tea. Willow smashed it right into my face in front of the entire class, and ordered me to go buy her another one. Her treating me like this didn't surprise me at all. Back in the day, I would have just swallowed my pride and taken it. Willow is my stepmother's daughter. She's 2 months younger than me. When my dad married her mom, he told me, "She's your little sister. She never had a father growing up. It's pitiful. As her older brother, you should let her win. Take care of her. Protect her." I asked why. Isn't there supposed to be gender equality? But he shut the topic down in a commanding tone. Frowning, he said, "Why are you asking so many questions? As a man, you should be the one protecting girls, giving way to them. Even if there's gender equality, we men should be more magnanimous." Got it? I was morally blackmailed. So from high school on, I let Willow get her way, but she kept pushing further, and even forbade me from publicly acknowledging we were related at school. And yet, I still had to follow Dad's orders and bring her snacks, clothes, whatever. Over time, the entire school began spreading rumors that I was Willow's simp. I tolerated her for 2 years. But today, I didn't feel like putting up with it anymore. I picked up the milk tea and walked toward her. The girls around Willow chuckled and mocked me. "Such a good little boy, he knows to pick up the trash." Willow looked at me with utter contempt. But the next second, I raised my hand with all my strength and smashed the milk tea straight onto her head. I cursed, "Fuck you." Chapter 02. Don't blame me for being this ruthless. Just 3 days ago, a mysterious man approached me and said, "I'll give you 50 million. Sell me the best thing you've got." I instinctively clutched my kidney in fear. He burst out laughing. "Relax. I don't want your organs. I want your morality." And in that moment, I understood. No wonder I put up with Willow's crap for so long. Turns out, the best thing I had wasn't my kidney. It was my morality. Under my gaze full of, "Is this really happening to me?" the man handed me a card. I checked. Holy shit, it really had 50 million on it. Riding the bus home in a euphoric daze of sudden wealth. I didn't get up to offer my seat to an elderly lady for the first time in my life. Instead, I rolled my eyes and said, "Oh come on, ma'am. You just chased the bus like an Olympic sprinter. And now you expect me to give up my seat?" As her face turned a thunderous shade of gray, I slowly realized, I really had no morals anymore. But damn, it felt good. Chapter 03. I'm not that strong. But I still managed to slam the entire milk tea right down on her head, completely destroying her overdone makeup and upper-class wannabe outfit. Not at all what a student should look like. The loud splat echoed like a comet smashing into the earth, leaving Willow totally dazed on the spot. After a moment, she finally let out a sharp scream. Her shocked expression turned into fury as she shouted, "George, how dare you?" I chuckled. Why wouldn't I dare? I sneered. "Willow, even stepping over the line should have a limit. I tolerated you all this time out of respect for my dad and your mom. Did you really think I was easy to mess with?" Willow, wiping crushed ice and milk tea off her face, was so furious her chest was heaving. She bit her lip and threatened, "You want me to tell your dad?" I scoffed. "What are you, 5? Still tattling? How childish. And besides that, do you even have any other tricks to threaten me with?" She was speechless. I went on. "Drop it, Willow. I didn't put up with you because I owed you anything. I was just shackled by some ridiculous moral values. That's all." Got it? Not just her. Even the onlooking classmates were stunned. I smiled and walked away with calm grace, as if nothing had happened. But I smiled too soon. That afternoon, I got cornered in the bathroom by a few of Willow's delinquent admirers. Chapter 04. The moment I stepped out of the stall, a bucket of ice-cold water was dumped right over my head. In November weather, it pierced through my bones and numbed my soul. Oddly enough, the rage made me calm. I just stared at them with a blank expression. The one leading the charge shouted, "What the fuck are you looking at? You dared to bully a girl. Apologize to her, now." I had been hassled plenty of times before by Willow's simps. Way worse stuff than this, but I had always kept the peace, never fought back, which only made them think I was easy prey. I rolled my wrists a couple times, looked at their cocky faces, and then, in the next second, I grabbed both of them by the neck and slammed their heads into the sink under running water. Aha! They flailed like two scrawny chickens. But no matter how hard they struggled, they couldn't break free. I didn't hold back one bit. Not until their legs turned to jelly and they collapsed to the floor. When I walked out of the bathroom, I was smiling, wearing the clean school uniforms I had stripped off their bodies, my own soaked clothes. I had graciously left those on them before I left. I even gave them a friendly reminder. Make sure to wash those clothes clean and return them tomorrow. Otherwise, next time, you won't be drinking sink water. Got it? Chapter 05. Those two thugs didn't bother me for the rest of the day, but what I didn't expect was for Willow to actually come looking for me. She's in the class next door. I was busy doing homework when she knocked on the edge of my desk. I frowned. What do you want? Willow tossed a fat stack of homework onto my desk, chin held high, and said smugly, "Finish it by today. It's due tomorrow." Her tone was so entitled, like she wasn't asking a favor, but offering me the privilege of pleasing her. That was just her usual way of doing things. She always treated me like a servant. Getting me to do her homework had practically become my responsibility. But today, I stared at her blankly and said, "Do it yourself." She froze, as if she hadn't expected me to refuse, hugging her papers. She eyed me suspiciously and asked, "George, did you take the wrong meds today?" The class bell rang just then. While packing up my stuff, I said, "From now on, you're doing your own homework." But Willow just frowned. Unbothered and defiant like she had nothing to lose, she snapped, "Makoto's taking me to a movie. You have to finish it for me." What the actual? I had rejection right on the tip of my tongue. But then I suddenly smiled. I said, "All right," took her homework, stuffed it into my bag, and before leaving, added cheerfully, "Since you're going on a date, I'll go ahead and send the driver away. Our family has a driver." My dad hired him to drive both me and Willow to school, but Willow always found ways to take the car alone, leaving me to squeeze onto the bus like a peasant. Without another word, I slung my bag over my shoulder and bolted. "George!" Willow's furious voice exploded behind me. Chapter 06. When I got home, my dad was sitting there spacing out, cigarette in hand. I tossed down my backpack and walked over. "Dad, is Aunt Lou not back yet?" "No." He shook his head, then glanced past me and asked, "Where's Willow? Why didn't she come home with you?" I sat at the dinner table, face blank. "She went on a date with some delinquent named Makoto." My dad looked utterly shocked. After all, I used to help Willow cover up everything. Neither of them ever had a clue. I wasn't in the mood to chat. I went to wash my hands, ready to eat, but my dad stopped me. "What's the rush?" "Wait." He pulled out his phone and started calling Willow and Aunt Lou, but after several unanswered calls, his face turned darker and darker. Honestly, even if someone did pick up, it wouldn't make much difference. In this house, my dad had little to no authority. In Aunt Lou's eyes, compared to her ex-husband, my dad was just a worthless cook, good for nothing except making a few dishes. Even though she never worked and relied entirely on my dad's paycheck and savings for daily expenses, she still believed being with him meant she was suffering. If she thought that, Willow certainly didn't see him as anyone worth respecting. That's why my dad only dared to talk tough with me. No one else listened to him anyway. I stared at him emotionlessly. "So, can I eat now?" He stubbed out his cigarette and muttered impatiently, "If you're hungry, go ahead and eat. Just leave the rest in the kitchen and keep it warm. I've got a headache. Gonna lie down." He pinched the bridge of his nose, sighed, and walked into his room. I devoured the food in minutes, then looked at the feast on the table, barely touched, thought for a couple of seconds, then picked up the dishes, and walked toward the trash can. Chapter 07. Willow came home at 11 o'clock at night. She tiptoed into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and found nothing to eat. Instantly furious, she called out my dad's name directly, saying, "Pablo." I yawned, furrowed my brows, and walked out, cutting her off. "What are you yelling for? It's the middle of the night. Are you trying to summon spirits?" She glared at me, clearly irritated. "Where's the food your dad made? Why is there nothing in the kitchen?" I gave a light "oh" and answered flatly, "He cooked." She asked, "Then where's the food?" I said, "In the trash." Willow looked at me in disbelief. She opened the trash can and sure enough, everything had been dumped inside. She pointed at the trash, her face turning red. "You threw it away?" "Yeah," I replied. "Why?" I shrugged. "You didn't come back for dinner. Whose fault is that? You think this is a home or a restaurant?" I stayed calm as I took a carton of milk from the fridge and put it in the microwave. While waiting, I enjoyed the look on Willow's face as if she'd just swallowed a fly. Willow burst into a furious rant. "Disgusting incel. Will you die if you're not being a jerk? I haven't eaten all day and you actually threw out dinner." The next second, I slapped a sponge soaked in dish soap right over her mouth. "What are you doing? she mumbled, trying to talk. I smiled and said, "Your mouth's too filthy. I'm cleaning it for you." With her furious expression behind me, I slowly strolled back to my room, holding the heated milk. Willow yanked off the sponge and while scrubbing her mouth, shot me a death glare and yelled, "George, how dare you treat me like this?" Just as I reached my room door, I turned slightly and smiled lazily. "Oh, what can I say, if it's that serious? Call the cops." Chapter 08. Willow was so angry she didn't sleep a wink that night. The next morning, she sat at the table with massive dark circles under her eyes and a scowl on her face. She complained. "Fried eggs, didn't I say I don't eat eggs?" She tossed her chopsticks down with a picky face and sulked in her seat. My dad frowned but said nothing. I walked over to the table, slapped the homework Willow gave me right in front of her, and said, "Can't you do this yourself? Do you think my dad is your servant?" She met my cold gaze and snapped back. "What, did you swallow gunpowder this morning?" I shrugged again. "Sure did, so don't provoke me, or I'll blow you up." Willow was speechless. Seeing the time was getting late, she stuffed her homework into her backpack and rushed out, trying to fight me for the driver. What a joke. I've got 50 million in the bank now. I can totally afford a ride. Before I left, I looked at my dad's troubled face and teased, "If I'm not wrong, Auntie Lou didn't come home last night, did she?" My dad froze. "Yeah." Seeing my gloating expression, he frowned and tried to defend her. "What do you know, kid? She called me last night, said she was getting her hair done. It was too late and dangerous to get a ride, so she stayed out. She even sent me a hotel video, nothing suspicious." I chuckled. "Where's the video?" Honestly, I feel like my dad lives in a fantasy world. He believes everything Lou says. Reluctantly, he handed me his phone. I glanced at the video. It showed a full scan of the hotel room. She was indeed alone. But, in the corner of the shoe cabinet, clearly, there were 2 pairs of shoes. Chapter 09. After arriving at the classroom, everyone started handing in their homework. I was in charge of collecting the English assignments. A few girls in the class looked at me with pitiful eyes and said, "George, I wasn't feeling well last night and forgot to do the homework. Can you talk to the teacher for us?" Playing weak and pretending to be pitiful, these girls had used that trick plenty of times before. I simply said, "Oh." Then I nodded and walked past them without stopping. But after the first period ended, the English teacher called them into the office. Willow was called in too. About 5 minutes later, one of the girls came back and, with a smirk, said, "The teacher wants you in the office too." The office atmosphere was silent and tense. Both the physics teacher and English teacher looked visibly pissed off. Those girls stood in front of the English teacher's desk with their heads down, wiping away tears as they got scolded. Willow, looking defiant, pointed at me as I walked in and said, "Teacher, he's the one who wrote it." The physics teacher, who's always been strict, threw a notebook in front of me and asked coldly, "You wrote this?" On the blank homework page, in bold black ink, 2 giant words sprawled across it. "Asshole." The physics teacher's face turned green with rage. Willow didn't look much better. She had probably already gotten reamed out. At that moment, I went through all the miserable memories in my life just to keep myself from laughing out loud. Chapter 10. The room was still dead silent. I stared at the physics teacher's balding head with a straight face and said, "I didn't write it." Just as I finished, Willow pointed at me and shouted, "He's lying." I frowned. "I'm lying. Willow, this is your homework. Why would I scribble something on it for no reason?" Willow froze for a second, clearly caught off guard. She opened her mouth but couldn't say a word. That's right, no comeback. Huh. If she kept pushing, it'd only expose how she used to ask me to do her homework. I curled my lips into a faint smile and turned to the physics teacher with a sincere look and earnest tone. "Teacher, she didn't do her own homework and now she's trying to pin it on me. You're wise and fair. I'm sure you won't be fooled by her, right?" The physics teacher had decades of experience. He looked at me, then at Willow, who was angry, silent, and clearly cornered. It wasn't hard to piece together the truth. He placed his hand on the notebook and said, "You can go back to class." "Got it," I replied cheerfully. As I walked out the door, I heard him roar behind me, "Willow, bring your guardian here tomorrow." At that, I instinctively raised my brows. Not long after I returned to class, Willow came stomping back, fuming, homework in hand. She slammed it on my desk and snapped, "George, are you out of your mind?" Being the school's so-called goddess, the moment she appeared, students around us immediately gathered. I stroked my chin and said, "Out of my mind, yep." Willow was stunned. She bit her lip and hissed, "Fine, just wait, you're so dead." As soon as she finished her tough talk and turned to leave, I suddenly stood up, grabbed her, and forced her down into the chair in front of my desk. Towering over her, I stared her down. Everything happened so fast the others barely reacted. They only saw me pin Willow between the desk and myself. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The whole class exploded into cheers and whistles, but in the middle of all that noise, I leaned in and said in a low, cold voice, "Don't wait. If you've got a threat to make, just make it now." Willow froze. I let her go and warned in a chilling tone, "If you want to call someone to deal with me, do it now. But let me say this first. Crazy people aren't illegal. If you're not afraid of getting burned, go ahead and light the fuse." Chapter 11. Willow's simp finally stopped simping. This news spread through the whole school like wildfire. In the afternoon, I went to get my school jacket back from the group of punks from yesterday. Maybe it was because I'd been acting too unhinged lately. When they saw me, they flinched a little and didn't try to mess with me. As soon as the final bell rang, Willow grabbed her backpack and rushed out of the classroom. I strolled slowly to the school gate, and sure enough, she had already taken the driver. I rolled my eyes, raised my hand, and flagged down a taxi. "To Blue Sky Realty," I said. Blue Sky Realty was the largest real estate agency in the city. When I stepped into the lobby, a receptionist walked over and asked, "Hello, are you here to meet someone?" "No," I replied, shaking my head. "I'm here to buy a house." The receptionist froze for a moment and asked suspiciously, "Are you of legal age?" I pulled out my ID and said, "I want to buy a property in the Violet Garden neighborhood." Before coming here, I'd gone to the bank next door to double check. The $50 million in my account was still sitting there, untouched. To avoid anything unexpected, I figured it was better to turn that money into a physical asset ASAP. The receptionist quickly made a call, and soon an agent came out with a stack of documents and started explaining the details of Violet Garden to me. They even took me to see a few units. Violet Garden was known for its great environment. It was a mid to high-end neighborhood. $5 million would get you a decent floor in a nice building. Plus, it was already built and move-in ready. I knew about this place because I'd heard my dad and stepmother talk about it once. They said that once they'd saved enough, they wanted to buy a place here. Honestly, the past few years had been suffocating. Stepmother Lou was settled in the southern part of the city. When she married my dad, she made it clear, if he wanted to marry her, he'd have to sell the old family house and move here to start fresh. But the housing prices in the south were insanely high. My dad didn't have the savings to buy property in this area. So we ended up living in the house left behind by Lou's ex-husband. That's why, even though my dad handed over every paycheck and tens of thousands in savings every month, every time they fought, Lou would still call him a useless freeloader for living in her ex's place. So yeah, owning a home here, that was my dad's ultimate goal all these years, the fire that kept him going. After I finished the tour, I quickly agreed with the agent to come back on the weekend to sign the contract. By the time I got home, it was already 6 in the evening. I opened the door and immediately heard a heated argument breaking out inside. Chapter 12. I changed shoes and walked into the house without any expression. I glanced around casually and saw my stepmother, caked in heavy makeup, leaning against the sofa with an impatient look on her face. My father sat sideways, puffing gloomily on a cigarette, his expression full of worry. Willow was sitting next to them, scrolling through her phone like none of it concerned her. When she saw me come in, she rolled her eyes at me with a sneer. Stepmother frowned and snapped at my dad. "All you ever do is smoke. Puff, puff, puff. One day it's gonna kill you. You barely make any money, but your bad habits keep growing. Like father, like son, both rotten. Marrying you is the worst mistake I ever made." My dad gritted his teeth and said, "What's the point of blaming my son? This has nothing to do with him. And Willow never tells me anything about what's going on at school. I have no clue what she's dealing with. If I could actually control her, none of this would have happened." My stepmother shot back. "Who else should I blame, if not your son?" She looked up and, out of the corner of her eye, spotted me. In a cold voice, she said, "So you finally came home." I dropped my backpack and replied coolly, "Yeah, what now?" She snorted and snapped. "What now? You tell me." "Because of you, Willow got in trouble and the school asked to see a parent. The teacher told me to come in tomorrow. Do you know whose reputation you're dragging through the mud?" I let out a laugh and said, "Not mine, that's for sure. Willow doesn't even allow me to say I'm her brother at school. So what's this got to do with me?" She barked. "Willow told me everything. If you just admitted it was your handwriting back then, none of this would have happened." I smirked. "And if I had admitted it, then the one being called in would be my dad instead." She bit her lip and hissed. "It was you who wrote it," I replied casually. "Sure it was. So what? Call the cops and have me arrested then." I stared her down, grinning with a devil-may-care attitude, backing her into a corner with every word. Her brows furrowed deep, and she looked at me, surprised. I knew exactly why. She's always been the type to nag and complain around the house. It wasn't the first time. In the past, both my dad and I would just quietly put up with it. But like today, pushing back at her like this, Never happened before. Her chest heaved furiously. Realizing she couldn't out-argue me, she turned to glare at my dad and yelled, "Look at the wonderful son you raised." My dad stubbed out his cigarette, looked at me thoughtfully, and said, "Well, George does have a point." Stepmother's face twisted into hysteria. She shot upright and screamed, "That's your response? That's how you're handling this?" She pointed at my dad and shouted, "What do you think I married you for? I've slaved over this house for years, raised your child, suffered through everything with you, and what do I get? All you two ever do is piss me off. I'm done. I can't stay in this house another second." With that, she stood up, grabbed her handbag, marched to the door, and gave me a hard shove. "When you finally realize your mistake, maybe I'll come back, then." Slam. The door shut with a bang. Chapter 13. The room fell silent again. My dad sat there rubbing his forehead, sighing non-stop. Even Willow stopped scrolling through her social media. She stood up and gave us both a cold side-eye. "Jinxes," she spat. That was her go-to insult for me and my dad. Honestly, the story between her mom and my dad is complicated. They were childhood sweethearts from the same village, but Lou's mom ditched my dad to chase a rich man. Later on, both of them got married. My mom passed away early, and my dad raised me alone, played both mother and father for years. Meanwhile, Willow's dad got his mistress pregnant with a son and then divorced her mom. Years later, Lou and my dad reunited and started a new family together. Because of all that, Willow always believed her misfortunes were because of this sexist world that only favored men. In the past, we just let it slide when she said stuff like that, but after the way her mother acted today, I'd had enough. The last bit of patience in me snapped. I looked up coldly and said, "What did you just say?" Willow hadn't realized she crossed a line yet. She snorted and sneered. I said, "Both of you, father and son, are a pair of jinxes. You're cursed. He's cursed. A useless freeloader like you should be grateful my mom even puts up with you. If it weren't for her, you two would have been sleeping on the streets. You've got no right to argue with her, and now you've even pissed her off so bad she left." She kept going, getting more worked up by the second. My dad's frown deepened, but when he opened his mouth to speak, nothing came out. I nodded silently and walked calmly into the kitchen. When I came back out, I was holding a kitchen knife. The blade gleamed, silver and sharp. I looked at Willow and said, "Come on, repeat what you just said." Willow refused to speak any further. Chapter 14. I got up in the middle of the night for a drink of water. My dad's bedroom door was slightly ajar, and I heard movement from inside. Still awake, I walked over without the slightest concern for privacy. My dad was on the phone, trying to call my stepmother. He'd tried several times, but she didn't pick up. Eventually, her phone went straight to voicemail, switched off. After he shut the door, I stood there thinking for 2 seconds. Then I went back to my room and called the real estate agent. He hadn't gone to bed yet. I got straight to the point. I changed my mind. I'm ready to sign the contract tomorrow afternoon. The next day, my stepmother came to school. When she saw me, she pretended I didn't exist. Not only that, I noticed something subtle. She'd changed outfits. She hadn't come home all night. Yet somehow, she was wearing different clothes today. After school, I got into the real estate agent's car and went to the office. The signing process went smoothly. Since I was still a student, they even offered me a great discount. After buying the place, I had the agent take me back to check out the unit again. I made a list of furniture and essentials, then asked him to help buy the rest for me. Once everything was finally settled, he invited me out for a meal. And guess where? The hotel where my stepmother had stayed. Over dinner, the agent sighed. "You're really something. So young and already this capable. The future's bright for you." I nodded with a polite smile. But my eyes never left the hotel entrance. Just as we were finishing up, I finally saw that all too familiar figure appear. At that moment, I turned to the agent with sudden warmth in my voice. "There's something I need your help with." The agent looked completely confused. Chapter 15. I told the agent that buying the house had been my parents' idea, and that they were currently at the hotel, waiting for him to come by. The agent flashed a charming smile and asked, "Which room?" I replied, "Oh, I forgot. Maybe we can ask the front desk." So I had him take out his business card, and I pulled out a set of pre-prepared documents. After a bit of persuasion and some fancy wording, the front desk finally gave in, pulled out the master key card, and was about to take us up. I stopped her. "No rush. It's not time yet." She looked confused. I stepped aside and took out my phone to start making calls. "Uncle." "Yeah. It's George. My parents wanted to treat everyone to a meal at TX Hotel." "Yup. Right now. Come quickly." "Auntie, my dad got the stuff you asked him to help buy. They want to see you at TX Hotel now." "Great, Aunt 6. The matter about my cousin going to high school is settled. My parents are treating the whole family. The teacher is right here at the TX Hotel." "Yes, Yes, bring everyone. When I finished, I let out a long breath. These were all my stepmother's relatives. Their numbers were labeled clearly in the family WeChat group. I picked out a few who were always active in the group and called them one by one. Most of them lived in the city and arrived quickly after getting the call. Soon, more than a dozen people surrounded me. Didn't you say your parents were looking for us? Yeah, where are they? I gave them a warm smile and said, they're waiting in their room. Come with me. So I returned, now with a dozen relatives trailing behind me. The front desk and the real estate agent were both shocked, but with so many family members around, they didn't doubt my story one bit. The front desk took the key card and led us up to the 3rd floor. Stopping outside a room, I stood back in the 2nd row of the group and quietly opened the live stream app on my phone. Beep beep. The key card swiped. Click. The door unlocked. Chapter 16. Great Aunt 6 charged ahead. My eldest grandson's schooling is urgent. Let me go in first. She lifted her chin proudly as she marched in and shouted, Sandra, Sandra, where are you? The rest of the relatives followed close behind, swarming into the room. We weren't exactly quiet, but even with all that noise, we couldn't drown out the unmistakable sounds coming from the bedroom. Crying and laughing mixed together in a strange rhythm. Every single person in the room heard it. At first, no one suspected anything. Only the agent frowned. Then his eyes lit up. He figured it out. Hearing the sounds, Great Aunt 6 strode straight to the bedroom, her bony hand gripping the doorknob. The agent rushed forward and tried to stop her. Hold on, wait, too late. With one frantic twist, Great Aunt 6 flung open the bedroom door, and the scene inside, let's just say it burned itself into everyone's retinas, and into the lens of my phone. 2 stark naked bodies tangled together, clearly mid-act, frozen, exposed. 3 seconds later, the room erupted into screams. My stepmother screamed from inside. Great Aunt 6 screamed from outside. If you didn't know any better, you'd think she was the one caught cheating. Meanwhile, I calmly raised my phone higher. Live stream still running. The viewer count had suddenly shot up to several thousand. I declared loudly and clearly, ladies and gents, I'm currently catching my stepmother in the act. If you're enjoying the show, hit follow and send a little gift. Everyone was speechless. Chapter 17. As the room erupted in chaos, my stepmother finally snapped back to her senses. She yanked the bedsheet around herself in a flash, while her lover scrambled to pull on his pants and shirt, shouting furiously as he tried to shove us out of the room. Who the hell let you in? Get out, now. But there was no way I was leaving just like that. I propped up my phone to make sure the scene was recorded clearly. Then, without hesitation, I roared and slammed a kick straight into that man's groin. His face twisted in pain. He collapsed to the floor and started writhing in agony. Right after that, I leapt onto the bed and grabbed the bedsheet, trying to rip it away so my stepmother would be fully exposed in front of everyone. You were cheating on my dad, I shouted. She tried to fight back, but I kept smacking her hard across the face as we wrestled for the sheet. Her face flushed bright red. She screamed hysterically. Are you insane? Get out now. I snapped back. I'm not going anywhere. Today, I'm teaching you a lesson for my dad. I wasn't holding back. She struggled to keep the sheet wrapped around herself while dodging my slaps. But she was no match for me. She was quickly covered in bruises and scratches. The shocked relatives finally rushed over to pull me away. But in the chaos, I twisted free, and their hands and feet ended up landing on her too. For a moment, it was total mayhem. The hotel room turned into an all-out war zone. The front desk staff finally came to their senses and called the police. 15 minutes later, we were all at the police station. My stepmother looked like she'd been mauled, covered in bruises, barely dressed, clinging pitifully to her lover's arms. She sobbed as she buried herself in his chest, then turned to glare at me with a look as dark and stormy as a brewing hurricane. Just then, the officer re-entered. Behind him were my father, pale and haggard, and Willow, face frozen in shock. My dad looked dazed, completely out of it, but when he saw my stepmother wrapped in another man's arms, well, what else needed to be said? But before he could open his mouth, my stepmother completely lost it. She pointed at him and screamed, "Just look at the kind of son you raised." Chapter 18. My dad gritted his teeth and turned to me first, asking with concern, "Are you all right?" I shook my head. Before I could speak, my stepmother cut in. "That little bastard is obviously fine," she snapped. "I'm the one who got hurt here. I've worked so hard to raise him, and what does he do? He lays his hands on me. At such a young age, already rotten to the core. He followed me, tricked the hotel, dragged in all our relatives. How twisted can someone's heart be?" As she went on, her voice began to choke with emotion. She sobbed, "Officer, he assaulted someone in public. You have to punish him severely." I ignored her, rolled my eyes, and turned to the police. "I'd like to file a report," I said. She's engaged in prostitution. My stepmother looked utterly dumbfounded. What nonsense are you spouting? She shrieked. I'm a decent woman. How could I possibly do something like that? Officer, don't listen to him. I let out a dry "oh" and stared at the men beside her. So, if it wasn't prostitution, then what? Coercion. The man's face twisted with anger. He straightened up and shot back. We can check the hotel security footage. She came into the room willingly. Willow suddenly chimed in. Just because she entered the room willingly doesn't mean she gave consent. My stepmother was speechless. Of course, she couldn't accuse the men of forcing her. So with a flushed face, she quickly said, I did give consent. I nodded and pressed further. So you consented, meaning, you two are in a relationship? Again, silence. She was trapped. If she said yes, it was cheating. If she said no, then it was illegal. I gave her no time to think. I went straight on. Not dating, not married, but voluntarily sleeping together in a hotel room. If that's not prostitution, then what is? Cheating on your husband and doing something so disgraceful in public. Even if I laid hands on you, I was doing the world a favor, delivering justice, cleaning up society. No matter how you looked at it, I had the upper hand. My stepmother's face turned pale and flushed all at once. Willow frowned and lashed out. George, you and your dad are just ungrateful wolves. My mom gave you a place to live and food to eat. And this is how you repay us. That line made my dad's hands tremble from anger. He clenched his jaw and said, What? Was the food I cooked not good enough? Ever since I married your mom, has she cooked even once? What more do you want from me? Every penny I earned, I handed over to her. I never once wronged the two of you, if anything. It's you who. I couldn't stand to hear another second of his sentimental crap. I cut him off with a wave and said to Willow, You say my dad and I are ungrateful wolves. Then what about you and your mom? Raised by someone who sleeps around for money. Which one of us should be more ashamed? Really? You. Willow and her mom were red with fury. The police finally had enough. That's enough. Everyone cooperate with the investigation. I stood tall and calm. Gladly, I said. I'll cooperate however you need. Chapter 19. It was already late at night when we finished giving our statements and stepped out of the police station. The cold wind hit us and sobered everyone up. My stepmother clung to that man, Bubba, and gave my dad a look full of disdain. At this point, there was no pretense left. We were officially at war. Holding onto Bubba's arm, Lou looked at my dad with disgust and said, We're getting divorced tomorrow. I can't live with you another day. And once it's done, move out of my house immediately. Then they stormed off angrily. Before leaving, Willow threw me a sidelong glance and scoffed. Serves you right, now that you're divorced. You don't even have a place to live. You two are like stray dogs now. Go wander the streets. My dad sighed but didn't say a word. But thankfully, although he had loved Lou deeply before, after everything that happened, he was finally starting to wake up. In the taxi, he patted me on the shoulder as if to comfort me. His eyes gradually grew clear as he spoke. I used to think that if I poured my heart into a woman, she'd stay loyal and true. But now I see, that was just wishful thinking. I also believed that being responsible, submissive, obedient, and letting her yell or hit me was what made a good man. But looking back now, those so-called values, those moral standards tailored only for men, they just turn you into a cheap, disposable tool. I scratched my head and muttered, Well, however you want to understand it is fine. You are my dad after all. He nodded. We'll definitely get divorced, and I'll fight to get my money back too, but all that takes time. We don't have a place in the city. So for now, you'll have to rough it out in the dorms with me. I curled my lips into a smile and said, That's not roughing it at all. Then I turned to the driver. Mister, take us to Violet Garden, please. Chapter 20. Outside Unit 601 at Violet Garden, the agent was energetically directing movers as they carried in the new furniture I had ordered. As soon as my dad and I appeared, the agent came up warmly. Mr. Wong, you're here. Take a look, everything's arrived. Is there anything else you'd like us to add? Before he could finish, my dad's face morphed into a giant question mark. I pulled him inside excitedly. Dad, from now on, we're living here. He stared at me in disbelief. You bought this place? I nodded. He asked, Where did you get the money? So I told him the full story, how I had sold my morals. After hearing it, his expression turned complicated. He looked me up and down. You're not hurt or anything, right? He asked. I almost laughed. Would I be? I'm fine. He still looked like he was in a dream. This isn't a small sum of money, he said. Are you sure it's legit? There's no catch. I replied. That's exactly why I bought a house. The deed has my name on it. Even if he tries to come asking for money, he won't get it easily. And now that we've bought it, we're staying here. We'll deal with everything else later. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. All right, soon. The excitement of having a new home overtook all his worries. He didn't bring up the moral compromise again. The next day was Saturday. I went with my dad to finalize the divorce with Lou. Maybe she was happy to have landed another sugar daddy. Or maybe she was afraid that if we took it to court, it'd cost her more. Either way, she gave my dad back the bank card, but she stood there, right at the edge of moral high ground, and said, "If you ever loved me, how could you take back something you gave away? Think it through. If you take that card, I will never give you another chance to come back to me." Chapter 21. After their marriage, even though they lived in my stepmother's house, a lot of the furniture and appliances had been bought by my dad, so, sticking to the principle of not leaving a single penny behind, I packed everything, even the toilet. Oh, and also that half bottle of toilet cleaner in the bathroom. Since it was, well, a special item, I didn't pack it with the rest. Instead, I casually hooked it onto my finger. But just as I reached the door, I heard my stepmother shamelessly running her mouth again. My dad's face flushed red, veins bulging in his neck as he was about to explode on her. And in the next second, I burst out of the house and shouted, "Dad, step aside." Startled, he instinctively took a few steps back. My stepmother heard the commotion, turned around with a frown, and was just about to scold me. Splash! Half a bottle of toilet cleaner came pouring down from the sky, drenching her completely. Right then, I whipped out the toilet brush, poked her with it, and yelled, "Smells like straight up shit. Here, let me clean that for you." My stepmother froze, and that's when she finally snapped. She couldn't take it anymore. Using the fastest speed of her entire life, she rushed off with my dad to get the divorce papers signed. Mission accomplished, and her parting gift. She got so furious she ended up in the hospital. Later, as the cold wind blew through the streets, my dad looked at me and asked, "So, where do we go now?" I replied, "Hot pot. A day this good has to be celebrated properly." 30 minutes later, as Willow and her besties walked into a hot pot restaurant, chatting and giggling, they were greeted by the scene of me and my dad, feasting like kings with our bellies wide open. Chapter 22. Willow froze in her tracks, staring at us in disbelief. My dad saw her too. He even gave her a little wave, but Willow raised her chin and walked right past us like we were invisible. Unfortunately for her, while she might have ignored us, her friends didn't. One of them, with a snide tone, said, "Willow, hey, George's dad just waved at you." Another chimed in, "Oh wow, his dad knows Willow. Guess George talks about her at home all the time." A third girl giggled into her hand. "Damn, Willow totally ignores him but he just keeps simping. Now the whole family knows her. Is he trying to propose or something?" Too bad the joke backfired. Bad timing. Willow's face turned darker and darker. Then, as if nothing was wrong, my dad looked at her and said, "Even though I divorced your mom and have no right to tell you what to do, she is in the hospital right now. Shouldn't you go check on her?" Willow sprang up like she sat on a hot stove. Her expression screamed, "Oh no." Turns out, she couldn't hide our relationship anymore. The girls around her were visibly stunned. "I'm sorry, what did I just hear? George's dad and Willow's mom. Wait, are they actually what I'm thinking?" Willow didn't have time to explain. She rushed over in a few quick steps, stared straight at me, and demanded, "What did you do to my mom?" I dipped a slice of beef tripe into the pot, took a bite, and said, "Who knows? She got poked a couple times and ended up in the hospital. If you want to visit her, better hurry. She might just heal herself in a minute." Willow bit her lip and snapped, "Poked? What do you mean by that?" I looked at her with a complicated expression, then slowly pulled out the toilet brush beside me, waving it slightly. I asked, "This, wanna try it out?" Willow refused to give it a try. Chapter 23. Willow stormed off in a rage. The next time I saw her was Monday, the first day of school. By then, the fact that we were siblings was no longer a secret. The classmates who used to glare at me with pure hostility now looked at me with complicated, even flattering, expressions. Someone whispered, "So all that time George was giving Willow gifts, it was under his family's orders." Another added, "We totally misunderstood him, but why didn't Willow ever explain?" Someone else chimed in, "Who knows? Maybe she just enjoyed having a simp chasing after her." One more voice replied, "I knew it. With George's looks and background, there's no way he'd be a simp." "Oh please, that's not what you said last time." The conversation bounced back and forth, but the gossip didn't stop there. News of my dad divorcing her mom spread like wildfire. The looks we got in class went from judgmental to sympathetic to awkward curiosity, all in a matter of days. But we didn't have time to respond, because my stepmother really was sick. Her health had never been good to begin with. This time, after I pissed her off, she ended up in the hospital for a full week, and as for the sugar daddy she clung to, He fled the city the very next night after she was admitted. Maybe it was the cold reality of being discarded. Or maybe she was just lonely and miserable. Either way, she suddenly began reminiscing about how good my dad had been to her. So, the first thing she did after being discharged was show up and play the victim in front of him. Chapter 24. My dad had completely transformed. You could even say he was overcorrecting. Every day, he buried himself in books by Warren Farrell. Refused to pick up any calls from my stepmother. And the moment a woman's voice came through the line, he blocked the number. She pestered him like this for nearly a month. Then finally, she caught us during the end-of-term parent-teacher conference, blocked us both right at the school gate, looking all sincere. She turned to me and my dad and said, "I only now realize, you were the one who truly treated me the best. Let's get back together. Okay, let's live properly this time." My dad, standing by the curb trying to hail a cab, brushed past her and said, "Excuse me, please move." Her voice cracked as she pleaded. "You're making, what, over 10 grand a month? You're probably still renting, right? All those times I said you were a freeloader, I was just angry. You know how emotional I get. I never meant it like that. I never minded you living in my place, as long as you're willing to hand over your salary. We can pretend none of it ever happened. How about that?" My dad replied, "Of course you never minded exploiting men to financially support women. As for being a freeloader, yeah, so what if I was? That whole narrative that men have to act like men by being the sole provider doesn't work on me anymore. I don't mind being a freeloader, but only if I'm actually getting something out of it." My stepmother stared at him, confused. Then she turned to me as our cab pulled up and grabbed my sleeve. "George, talk some sense into your dad. With your current living conditions, how are you going to focus on your studies?" Expressionless, I shut the door, but she wasn't done. She flagged a cab of her own and followed us. The two cars weaved through the traffic and finally pulled up in front of Violet Garden. She caught up, eyes wide. "What are you doing here?" I walked through the entrance and said calmly, "Going home." "Of course." Her voice went sharp. "You live here?" I answered. "Yes." Her face twisted in disbelief. "That's impossible. Your dad only makes $14K a month. There's no way you can afford Violet Garden. You're faking it. You're putting on a show just to save face." She was cracking. I lifted my access card and scanned in. The gate opened. I stepped through slowly. And just before the gate shut behind me, I turned around and gave her a mocking smile. Her eyes turned red with fury. I walked a few more steps, then paused and looked back again. "Oh right, almost forgot. The doctor told you not to get too emotional, right? Still, there's something I should remind you." Her facade dropped completely. She glared at me and growled. "What?" I lifted my phone and waved it at her. "If you can, maybe stay off the internet." My stepmother was never truly sorry. She just wanted to keep lording over us, treating me and my dad like obedient dogs who'd come and go at her command. But what's more infuriating than seeing someone you once looked down on, living better than you ever imagined? If anything is worse than that, it's this, the video of her getting caught cheating. I posted it online, and it went viral. Chapter 25. The backlash came like a tidal wave. Fake photos, doxing. That was the mild part. Her scandal was even picked up by official news outlets. She was publicly condemned for her behavior. And just like that, even her relatives, who barely ever touched the internet, found out about her disgrace. Her elderly mother, a fierce old woman with one foot already in the grave, came all the way from the countryside to the city, pointed a bony finger in her face, and roared, "I don't have a daughter as shameless as you." Well, congrats. Now she's practically an orphan. Then came her job, the one she had only just landed. She was fired immediately, so fast, it was almost impressive. At this point, even eating became a problem. She was so furious. She landed back in the hospital, but even lying there, whenever she was awake, she could still hear the whispers from the nurses outside her room. "That's her, the woman who cheated and prostituted herself. Ugh, so gross. I don't even want to go in and check her vitals," another nurse replied. "Trashiest of the trash. Next time I give her an injection, I'm making sure she feels it." Chapter 26. As things spiraled further, Willow finally cracked. She came to find me. At first, she was relatively calm. She begged me to make a public statement and clear things up. I stared at her and said flatly, "Clarify. You want me to lie in front of the entire country?" Willow pressed her lips together. "George, she was your mother once. Can't you let it go, just for that?" I raised an eyebrow. "Oh," I said casually. "Nope." Willow's chest heaved violently. Her patience ran out. She jabbed a finger at me and shouted, "George, if you drive her to death with anger, people will judge you morally too. Can your conscience really live with that?" I stared at her, smirked, and said slowly, "Morally? I raised a brow and let out a low chuckle. You might not believe this, but I sold my morals. Willow froze, utterly confused. She clearly didn't believe me, probably thought I was just being sarcastic. Frustrated, she cursed me again. Jinx, then turned and stormed off. The next day, Willow's attempt to guilt-trip me and shame me online backfired. That video went viral too, and just like that, the person shouldering public outrage went from 1 to 2. 2 days later, they both left the city. Even their withdrawal paperwork was done behind my back, like I was some kind of plague they were terrified to touch. For a long time after that, I was the nightmare that haunted them both. That's when I finally understood, the only way to deal with shameless people is to abandon morality and out-trash them at their own game.